Today on the DML News Podcast, we're going to talk about the importance of freedom of speech, Trump, Ukraine, minerals, Biden, Secretary of Navy. We've got a whole list of things going on because that's what happens these days. We're going to talk about it proudly, and it's going to be all unfiltered.
Dennis Michael Lynch gives you his word, and he will never let you down. He will always fight for America.
The only one who really puts his money where his mouth is Dennis Michael Lynch.
Hello, I'm Dennis Michael Lynch, and I thank you for joining me today. Across from me is my son Denny, and on the controls is my son Ryan. We come to you here proudly, tell you everything you need to know about what's happening on the Trump whole Make America Great Again mission, his administration, and of course, the resistance to what he's trying to do. This is all inspired by 47 Report. 47report.com is our new newsletter. It is unbelievable in terms of how many people open it every day. And I just wound up having a conversation with somebody yesterday who was reading it and said, I can't start my day without it. I can't start my day without it. I was in a panic. I was like, where the hell, what's going on? What, they not sending us something out today? And it turned out being in their spam. You've got to watch out. AOL, just AOL alone, based on a recent study, 33% of conservative emails, conservative messaging emails, go to the spam bucket, 33%. And Google and Gmail, Yahoo, not much better. So go to 47report.com. You put in your email address. Starting tomorrow, you're going to get it every day before 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you don't see it, it's in your spam bucket, and you just simply pull it over, depending on who it is you're using, Gmail, Hotmail, Yahoo, whatever, and then it will be in your inbox. They may try to screw you up again, do it again, you just bring it back in. And then you'll be like the other people, the thousands upon thousands and thousands, soon to be millions of people who rely on the 47 Report every single day to understand what's really going on with this administration and the movement to make America great again. So go to 47, numeralized, 47report.com, sign up, and you will be so happy that you did, because a lot of the stuff we report on isn't the sort of things that they're going to show you on Fox News or in any of these other outlets. So 47report.com. That said, I'm going to open up today talking about a very important thing, maybe the most important thing that there is for any person in life, aside from having good health. And that is the ability to speak what you have to say without fear of being prosecuted for it. It is the ability to say what needs to be said and for information to be conveyed without any sort of gatekeeper. And, I just talked about how 47 Report is wildly popular, opened up more than any other newsletter of its kind because people want to get information. And think about what I said. You've got this leftist movement. Technology is basically owned by the left, trying to take the message that we're giving out, the pro-Trump message, because every day, if there's one criticism about the newsletter, it's that it's long, even though we put it in bullet point fashion. And the reason why it's so long is because Donald J. Trump is accomplishing so many things every single day. He's making the first 100 days of his presidency like something we've never seen before. And so all that positivity, all of the positivity is sent to the spam. Or in Facebook's world, it's sent to the bottom of a news feed. It's ratcheted back. This is what they do. If you have a positive message about Donald J. Trump or about conservatism or about pro-America, you are going to be silenced because the left owns that. They own it. I'm going to play a video for you in a couple of seconds here of Vice President Vance. And yesterday, he was defending what he said when he was over in Europe. And that is a lot of the European countries, Germany and UK at the very top, are limiting what it is that people in their country can and cannot say. In Germany, if you post something that is insulting to another person, you can be arrested. And then on top of that, if you are somebody who shared that post, you too are a co-conspirator. Think about that for a moment. How dangerous is that? That is a way of silencing people through fear. In the UK, they have basically lost control of their country. They have let so many radical Muslim extremists into their nation. I just watched a video yesterday. I was going to repost it. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I can't recall. If I didn't, I should have. The video shows Muslim migrants in the middle of the streets pounding, and I mean pounding, on police officers. Now, if that were, let's say, a bunch of white guys in the UK, Christians, pouncing on their police, these people would be in life imprisonment. But nothing's going to happen to those Muslims. Now, a lot of these people, another thing I read this morning, of a man, a Muslim man, who was actually having a relationship with an 11-year-old girl. And he stated, this is normal. This is completely normal in my home country. And they take that sort of craziness and they try to make it normality in the UK. Now, if you are a UK resident and if you have lineage dating back centuries and you dare go on Facebook and you say something about that, about how is this country, how is my UK, how is my beloved Britain allowing all these people to come in and they're raping young girls and they're doing all these bad things and these nefarious things. We shouldn't be doing this. This is baloney. And you write whatever it is. And God forbid you write one little thing like these people are animals. You're going to have somebody knocking on your door. You're going to be arrested. And if somebody in your family or friends or network shared that, you too are in trouble. Now, here's the craziest thing. We have seen over the last 6, 7, 8 months that people in the UK who write negative things online are getting bigger punishments than the people that they're writing about that are doing unbelievably nefarious, evil things to children. This makes no sense. Now, if you think that this is happening just purely over in Europe, you are wrong. Yesterday, I had a lovely dinner with 2 new friends, older than me. One guy's 65 and the other one's 72. And they live in my neighborhood, and we met, and we were sitting there talking and learning about each other. And one of the gentlemen asked, what do you do? I said, well, I have 2 businesses. I have a media company. I do a podcast and stuff. I said, and I have a very successful CBD company. He said, you're in CBD? I said, yeah, I'm in CBD. So the one fella says, CBD is an absolute miracle if you get the right CBD. And I said, yeah. I said, we're one of those companies that are on the higher end. We are the Ferrari. You take my stuff, you're going to feel the impact on a positive nature. And he said, yeah, it's all tested and everything. I said, double tested. The ingredients are tested. I said, then we put it together in a bottle, and then we test the bottle. Oh, goodness gracious. This is fantastic. I got to get more. He says, my sister has cancer, and they've tried everything on her. And finally, out of all the options, not doing anything for her, she said, the hell with it. She said she read an article online about CBD, blah, blah, blah. And he went on to say that she started using CBD from a very, very high-end company, just like us, and that all of a sudden, her tumor stopped growing, and it started going in the reverse direction. He says, this is the best she's felt in the longest time. He says, but if you go in and you ask a doctor about that, they're going to shut you down immediately. The other gentleman turns around and says, during COVID, he says, I had read a couple of articles, and it turned out to be that it was an article I actually published, and that's the funny small world of all things. He says, I read a story about a man who was in the hospital for 2 weeks, maybe even a little longer, and he was dying of COVID, and that the doctors went to his wife and said, you should go home and get all your affairs in order. Your husband isn't going home. He's basically going to die. And she wound up, a woman winds up being a friend of mine, getting a bottle of CBD, just turns out to be DML CBD, goes back into the hospital and says, my husband has no chances, you told me yesterday. He said, yeah. He says, I want to give him this. She says, I want to give him this. And the doctor says, ma'am, Do as you like. 4 days later, he was out of the hospital. Today, he is perfectly healthy. If and when I or anybody else would have told that story during COVID, we would have been kicked off Facebook, shut out of every single last technology hub, removed from every single last platform. We would have had people at our homes in federal jackets ready to sweep us away. Why? We had doctors back in COVID, doctors who had 40 years of experience, every single last diploma. You know, you look behind me, you see all these pictures. I mean, we're talking about doctors who have diplomas behind them that are more than these pictures. And they were shut down. Why? Because they were voicing something that the higher-ups didn't want them to voice. You can talk about politics, you can talk about healthcare, you can talk about immigration, you can talk about whatever topic it is. But if the higher-ups don't want you to talk about it, they will silence you in every single way possible, whether it's in the UK or in Germany, putting you in jail, or whether it's here in the United States to where they will make sure that you have absolutely zero reach. The First Amendment, the freedom of speech, the ability to be able to articulate an argument or a question or a claim. If we no longer have that, if that is stripped away from us, then we are nothing other than robots. We are nothing other than peasants, just sitting at the whim of those at the top. Think about what I've just told you, just using the CBD story of yesterday alone. Here are two strangers that had no idea of what I did prior to us sitting down at that table. And both of them had stories to which tied back to that silence. Silence is a killer. Who would want that? Who would drive that? Think about the pharmaceutical companies. This is the next stage of our conversation yesterday. They said to me, why is it? They said, Dennis, you've got both worlds here. You said you're in the media and you said you're in CBD. So let's just focus in on that for 1 second. Why is it that you would not be able to, or somebody else would not be able to, come out and tell stories of what it is that you've actually witnessed? Why didn't we know? Why didn't Anthony Fauci get up and say, hey, listen, there is a possibility that CBD can not only prevent, but help cure this problem? Because right on the NIH website, National Institute of Health, Anthony Fauci's website, if you go in Google right now, or wherever search engine you use, NIH COVID CBD, you will see a research report that says that CBD may actually prevent and help cure COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2. They had the research report right there. University of Chicago had the same sort of report. There was another university, I can't remember which one it is, had the same sort of report. I knew it right away from day one. How did I know? Because I started studying COVID from day one. It never made any sense to me. And basically what COVID was, not to go too deep back into the weeds, but what COVID was, it was an immune response. You had a receptor. There was a certain receptor in your body that said, hey, I've never seen this before. I've never seen a virus like this before. I don't know how to treat this. Because see, when you go back in time, when you were a little baby and you were crawling around and you were taking things like this and sticking it in your mouth, you were putting germs in there. What you were doing is you were building your immune system. And your immune system was saying, hey, the next time Dennis puts this magic marker in there, I know how I'm going to protect him from it. And that's what happened with the immune system. Now, all of a sudden, you've got this new virus that the body has never seen before. And if you have people who are old and overweight, obese, the immune system is weak to begin with. People who already had underlying causes, underlying diseases. And so the immune system went into what was called a cytokine storm. It went overdrive, and it created an incredible amount of inflammation in that receptor. And that receptor says, we need to fix this. And that overcompensation of the immune system, that cytokine storm, created so much inflammation that what wound up happening was that the lungs filled up with fluid, and that is how people died. People didn't die from the virus. They died from the immune response to it. So when I'm reading this and I see that receptor, I said, wait a second. I know that receptor. Because when I studied my CBD company before I launched it, I wanted to know everything that I was going to be selling, everything that I was putting into my body and my children's bodies. And the CBD was doing the same thing on the reverse. It was going into that receptor and it was telling that receptor, lower inflammation. And I put one and one together. And I said, wait a second. If this COVID thing is an immune response to the receptor, let's just call it receptor 4, to receptor 4, and we've got something that will tamp down receptor 4, well, obviously, this is the great way of doing this. The second you open your mouth and say something like that, the pharmaceutical companies go bat crazy. And here's why. Because the pharmaceutical companies can't control a crop called hemp. They could only control the garbage that they develop inside laboratories, synthetics. You know, I had a man on here 2 weeks ago, maybe you saw it, on my weekend show, Life After 50. He was from Ghana, grew up in the jungles. He said he got bit by a scorpion. I asked him, I said, how is it that people in the third world who don't have access to clinics, who don't have access to Mayo Clinic or Johns Hopkins or UCLA Health System, how do you get well when you are sick? And he said, we used God's medicine. Well, what do you mean God's medicine? We used plants and herbs and things that grew from the ground. I said, so when you got bit by a scorpion, you used some plant? He says, yeah, I can't remember what it was. My mother had the plant and whatever it may be, and we rubbed it on there. And he goes, before you know it, it was better. God did not create the drug companies on the 8th day. He did not. But what he did was he just kind of took a rest, and evil created itself on the 8th day. And evil is what keeps you and me and everybody else from being able to say what we want, when we want to say it, and how it is that it should be said. And if there's one thing that you should fight for in this world, in your life, it is your ability to be able to speak freely. Now, that doesn't mean going to tell somebody that there's a fire in a movie theater when there is not. Common sense says that when there is a conversation to be had, people should be able to freely express themselves no matter where they live in the world, for the fact that that is a God-given right to be able to speak. If you go back to the days of the Bible, Jesus, why did he really get in trouble, if you want to call it that? Why was he really crucified? Because they were taking away his freedom of speech. They didn't want him to spread the word of God. And as much as they tried to stop him, he kept on doing it. And every time he said another thing, people believed in what he was saying because it made sense. It felt good. It felt right. And so the only way to silence him was to kill him. And by having your message brought down to the bottom of a newsfeed or having your message deleted because it goes against the community standards is a line of BS that this administration right now has to fight for above all other things. A mineral deal with Ukraine is nice. Deporting illegal aliens to Venezuela is great. Getting a new pipeline for new oil is fantastic. But if we do not defend our ability to tell the truth and to express ourselves, we have no life. You are just a robot. With that being said, I'll put a little commercial in here. DMLCBD.com, we're offering right now to all people who are 47report.com subscribers and DML Report subscribers, same thing, 47report.com. If you're getting the newsletter, then you know you can go to DMLCBD.com, put in at checkout news, NEWS, as your coupon code, and you will save 50% on anything and everything, no matter what you order. Our way of trying to give back and to help you. So imagine going into the Ferrari dealer and them telling you that you're going to pay Kia price. There you go. DMLCBD.com/nothing, right? DMLCBD.com. Just go there. You go to the buy page. You look at what it is you want. You want better sleep. You want to have a diminished level of pain. You want to have your anxiety curbed, skin revitalized. Like I said, the sleep thing is off the charts great. DMLCBD.com, pick out whatever you want. You check out, and at checkout, you put in news, NEWS. You get 50% off. Now, with that being said, let's play the video of Vice President J.D. Vance defending the ability to speak freely.
In his remarks at the Munich Security Conference, Vice President Vance condemned free speech violations in the UK, particularly. Could you respond? What is your message?
I have an idea. We have the man right here. Come on. Let's go, JD. We're putting you on stage.
Great. Yeah, look, I said what I said, which is that we do have, of course, a special relationship with our friends in the UK and also with some of our European allies. But we also know that there have been infringements on free speech that actually affect not just the British. Of course, what the British do in their own country is up to them, but also affect American technology companies and by extension American citizens. So that is something that we'll talk about today at lunch.
We've had free speech for a very, very long time in the United Kingdom, and it will last for a very, very long time. Well, no, I mean, certainly we wouldn't want to reach across US citizens, and we don't, and that's absolutely right. But in relation to free speech in the UK, I'm very proud of our history there.
You know, Dennis, people, the leadership in the UK is full of it, okay? That scum and the other scum around him actually put out a notice. I remember this going back a couple of months ago when there were the, if you want to call them riots or protests, where there were a couple of youngsters killed. The thought was they were killed by migrants, and things were breaking out in the street. And people from all over the world had something to say about it. And they actually said in the UK that if American citizens say something that breaks our laws, we are going to come for you. That's back when Joe Biden was sitting in there destroying the country. The UK can take that statement and you can stick it up your ass. You want to come get me? Come try.
I was going to say, I think they even leveraged trying to arrest Elon Musk because he was trying to bring attention to the issue. But yeah, I mean, for Keir Starmer at the end there to say that, oh, we've always been proponents of free speech is obviously a big load of bull crap. And you can even kind of catch it there on J.D. Vance's face at the end where he's just like, really? You know, I mean, to your point, you could go post a meme if you're in London and you could be thrown into jail. You can complain online that your neighbor got robbed by a migrant and you could be thrown in jail. France is obviously not the UK, but someone actually just pointed it out here. If you're in France right now, you're not watching us on Rumble because they have Rumble banned, and they're pretty much, you know, everywhere in Europe in that little conglomerate. Even Germany, right? They just elected a conservative leader who's still kind of vouching for migrants to come over. They are a mess. It's why when we've been talking about, hey, maybe it's time for that mutual breakup of, you know, this whole alliance thing we got going here is not working because not only are you ruining your own countries, but now by proxy, your free speech stuff and what you're doing with the migrations is going to impact us too. We want no part of it. And they've been very difficult in the entire handling of the Ukraine situation. So I'm sure that lunch must have been very funny for Keir Starmer to kind of claim that they are the world's leading country in free speech when they're far from it.
It's hysterically sad. But then again, you know, we have to remember here in the United States, we can't stand tall and say that we have always stood for free speech. That is a lie. That is a lie. This administration does. Absolutely. But the last administration did not at all. And if you think about how long it's been since Facebook, and I use Facebook because I just put this out. Like I said, we have the 47report.com comes to you every single morning. Then we get the DML report. It's the same thing in terms of you just sign up in one place and we've got you covered. But the DML report goes out every day at 5 p.m. Eastern. And I was just doing a whole thing about this. You know, the idea that you can be free in what you want to say is untrue, because when Trump won in 2016, Facebook changed everything upside down because they were pressured by the left to silence people like me, to silence people like you, because they didn't want to have a pro-Trump message put out. This country has taken the First Amendment and abused it in the sense that we've allowed technology companies to hide behind their policies and being able to take people and silence them based on what they feel is right and what they feel is wrong. That's not America.
It's not. No, it's not. I just, and that's why when you have someone like J.D. Vance, who I mean, I never really saw it from Mike Pence. Mike Pence could somewhat talk the tough game, but not necessarily what Vance just kind of did in the Munich conference weeks ago. He put Europe in a way on notice, saying that, while we're maybe a little bit on a struggle bus right now based on what Biden has done, we are the cleanup crew. We are trying to establish what the precedent is going forward from all factors, right? Elon Musk with DOGE, they're trying to clean up all the wasteful spending. Christy Noam and everyone at DHS, they're trying to get things under control. Tom Homan trying to get things under control with illegal aliens. So everyone is trying in the Trump administration, even HUD, right? HUD just canceled an old contract that Biden and Obama had tried placing in that made things with home ownership affordability difficult too. They're trying to just do the work of scraping all the bad to get the good, or at least the transparency, back in place. And that's obviously going to be a little bit of an ugly process with all the different issues that we're facing.
Oh, no doubt whatsoever. And now that Trump is back in office and he is swinging a hard fist, when I say a hard fist, it means he's not going to take BS from anybody. We're starting to see that there is a little bit more flexibility in some of these technology companies that basically are, if you think about it, they're the telephone, right? I mean, think about this for a moment when you talk about free speech and the ability to post what it is you want when you want. The platforms, Facebook, I just lost my train of thought for 2 seconds ago. Facebook, 63% of Americans say that they get their news from Facebook. So think about how that goes. Facebook is actually dictating what can and what cannot be seen by people. Now you wonder why you got so many people voting for the likes of somebody like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, assuming that it's fair up votes. I mean, you got a lot of people, and the reason being is they're getting their information fed to them by far leftists who are going to kill the right message and push the left. I just told you about AOL. Think about that. If you're somebody who's getting emails forwarded to you, and you're going to get an email forwarded from a far leftist, and then you're going to have an email sent to you from 47 Report from somebody in your family, I'm going to go to spam, but the leftist is going to be right there in your bucket. So they're going to read what it is that one person is saying, and that's all they're getting. And that's why the ideology and the mindset starts to go in a direction, because when you sit down and say the facts to somebody, they're shocked. How many times I've sat with somebody and gave them the facts on something, and they're like, no, what are you talking about? What do you mean, what am I talking about? This is actual factual information. No, it's not. Yes, it is. But it's being driven by these companies in such a way to where we have twice, if not 3 times the hurdle to get over to get somebody on the other end the truth.
It's essentially trying to break through an echo chamber. When you have someone that's been fed, maybe a narrative, so to say, over time, it's very hard to get someone pulled out of it. I mean, if you really look at it as a grander scope, think about everything that's happened in the last 10 years, that if you were to try to tell somebody 20, 30 years back, this is going to happen, they would look at you like you're an alien in disbelief. And it's going to show that, there are a lot of bright people out there that aren't in the government or attached to some kind of entity that are able over time, and it takes time, to connect the dots on things that the general public doesn't see. And then when the public sees it, they want answers, right? They want answers that say, what was really going on here? Why was this president or that secretary or this person acting in a certain way? And the American people are smart. Trump just said it, I think, last week in one of his Oval Office press pools. The American people are smart. They can pick up on the BS. They know when they're getting spoon-fed something that is contrary to the reality. So I love it when people do get that sense of wake up, because even though it may be a cold shock to the face, wouldn't you rather know what's really going on or have the transparency than just be told everything's going swimmingly?
Well, here's the other thing too. And imagine, this is the point I was making 2 seconds ago. If 63% of people are getting their news from Facebook, think about where the other people are getting from. Like your mother was just saying to me, we were talking about last night, we were talking about costs. And I said, just give me some of the costs that are just coming out that you think we could get rid of. So she said, well, I'm spending $7 a month. Wasn't the kind of cost I was talking about. She goes, I'm spending $7 a month on getting Apple News. I said, we got the DML News app, you got the 47 Report newsletter, and you live in a household with a guy who's in the news business. Why are you spending $7 on Apple News? That's the first thing. And then after I gave her crap about that and told her to cancel it, I said, Mary, on top of that, don't you realize that Apple News is sending you all far left stuff? And she goes, yeah, I know. She goes, it's amazing, the stuff that I'm getting in from them. If I wasn't married to you, I would believe this. So if you think about, if you're not getting it from Facebook and you're getting it from your Apple or your Android phone, everything is being controlled by the left. Today, apps and platforms are the new telephone. Think about your own life. How many phone calls do you actually have in a day versus how many text messages and scrolls you have? The old days, we used to be on the phone all the time. I'm not on the phone. If I'm on the phone one time a day, it's a lot. There's some days I go, I'm never on the phone. My phone never rings, but I get text messages. Imagine if the phone company was listening in on your conversations and they heard you say something bad about COVID and the vaccine, and they shut off your phone in mid-sentence. It's the equivalent of what they're doing right now on the platforms. How long until we're text messaging back and forth and your text messaging stops because you text message somebody about how CBD can be a great alternative? Or you say the people in the UK are allowing all these freaking animals into their country, and your text messaging stops. That's where we're headed for if Trump and this administration and Congress don't get in front of this, because the next president, if it's not a conservative, is going to see to it that never, ever again does a Trump-esque figure ever have a chance of getting back to the White House.
And those kind of tactics are applied widely in China. I mean, China has this thing where if you're a businessman or a celebrity and you start speaking out against their party or things that there are, that are in line with some of their actions or even past historical events like the Tiananmen Square, they do this thing where you almost like disappear for a few months, like literally like radio silence. And then that person always comes back, with an opposite position. Now, I think it's more of you want to keep, your wealth as a businessman in Hong Kong or in Shanghai. This is what you're going to do. You don't go against Xi Jinping. So if we're entering, and I think we would have entered that stage exponentially through a Kamala Harris presidency. Biden was already teeing it up. She would have been the home run. So I'm super thankful. I am super thankful that is not the case. So the question becomes, can the Trump administration, based on this messaging that they have presented, the America First, we're transparent, we're going to try and bring back, the honesty that we want and the meritocracy that we want in our government, right? Like we talked about it all week. Elon Musk's overall goal is to change the idea that working for the federal government is like some schlep job. It's supposed to be the elite of the elite. So if they can accomplish that, fantastic. I think there's going to be some hiccups. I know there was a major one yesterday, but what I'll always give them credit for is that they're at least trying to vouch and go that path compared to Kamala and Joe and Obama, for that matter, where their whole method was absolute gatekeeping. You're not going to know, we will know, and we're going to protect our own. If that's the age that's coming down, fantastic.
Well, think of this way. We never really shared this with our audience. I don't think we did. But prior to the November election, for August, September, and October, we had a dual plan. If Trump wins, we're in. Newsletters, app, podcast, you name it. If Trump loses, we're folding up. We were going to literally fold up tent because we recognized that it would be futile to even try to get a message out, let alone highly dangerous for our own security, because they're going to kill off the people, right? And I don't mean literally, but I mean they're going to crush your communication. You're not going to be able to do it. You're going to be targeted. And so that's how dire we looked at things. And although we escaped that destiny, we have to always play in the mindset that says we are 4 years away from having that back. So do I like J.D. Vance? Yeah. Do I like Donald J. Trump? Absolutely. Do I fear that the left right now is plotting and trying to figure out how to end this? Meaning that J.D. Vance, if he were the nominee, doesn't get in, scares me to no end. And we are always just one administration away from losing everything. And that's why, like, I even looking right now on Facebook, think of this. Anybody who's been with me for quite some time knows that anytime I ever had a live podcast or a walk and talk, it would be 2,500, 5,000, 15,000, 25,000 people listening. Right now we have 200. Do you think that's because all of a sudden thousands of people became, I don't like DML anymore. I don't like what he has to say. No, absolutely not. So what it is that's Facebook taking everything and ratcheting it back down to 200. And here's their argument. And this is why it is that Trump and the administration needs to focus on this. We need to focus on what I'm about to say, and we need to focus in on elections. We got to get this done now, because if we don't win the midterms, there's never going to be a chance to do it, right? And I understand taxes are important and border is important, but what we're talking about right now is the bedrock of the United States of America. Facebook will allow me on here. They're going to say, what are you talking about? We gave Dennis Michael. We didn't kick Dennis Michael Lynch off. He's on there. He's got all the access to all the tools. Yeah, but he's not reaching. How do you take a man who has 1.5 million people on your platform and make it so this way when he does a live show, only 200? Think about that for one moment. 1.5 million people sitting in front of you, an ocean of conservatives at 10 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast, 7 o'clock in the morning on the West Coast. Everybody's up. Only 200 people out of 1.5 million want to hear what we have to say today? My ass.
Mary Alice says, I sometimes don't even get notifications. You know,
Nobody gets notifications. Nobody gets notifications. Everybody doesn't get notified. And this isn't just about Dennis Michael Lynch. You could probably take any other person in the conservative movement who I believe is worth listening to, albeit none of them as good as us, and you would have the same experience. Now, I'm going to tell you all of it. Let's test this. We have 196 people on here live right now. If every single last one of you were to hit the share button right now, I guarantee you this number doesn't go up to 400 or 500. It's going to go up by a trickle, because that share is going to be squashed. It's going to be thrown to the bottom because the algorithm is set in such a way to where we're marked as the bad guys, and we're going to be limited. So what they do is they give you your freedom of speech. They don't give you the right of reach. And that is the most illegal way of shutting down the First Amendment. That's that. I'll give you another example of something. So Trump, in part of his conversation yesterday, is talking about Ukraine and NATO. We've got a mineral deal happening, and at the same time is NATO. The majority of Americans do not want the United States in NATO. It makes no sense. We don't need them. They need us. We're paying for the whole damn thing. It was a great idea a long time ago after World War II. Now we are in the world of drones. We don't need to be in NATO. It is a cost to us. It is a burden to us. We should get rid of it, just like we should get rid of the United Nations. Just get rid of the damn thing. If I were to say this under the Biden administration, I very well may have my video taken down. Very well may have it taken down. Now I say it, and we'll play a video of it right here. The algorithms are going to pick up on the words NATO, and automatically, because you're talking about something like that, it will be crushed even more so. Ryan, cue up the video right now of Trump yesterday talking about Ukraine and NATO.
The Europeans want Ukraine to be part of NATO as part of this deal. Are you willing to budge on that at all, or is it a firm?
Well, I could be very nice and say, oh, well, we'll work to it. Look, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. That's what started this whole thing. Biden said that, and all of a sudden the gun started. That was one of the primary reasons it started. And this was long before President Putin. They never said it was an impossibility. So we can say, oh, gee, well, we'll try. But that's something that's just not going to happen. And then the other question I ask is about the land. Will you get your land back? Well, they've fought long and hard on the land, and you and I will be discussing that. And we're going to certainly try and get as much as we can back. But on the NATO, it's just not, that's not going to happen. Yeah, please.
Your thought?
I mean, he's got a point. I think, obviously, with Putin being the one who ultimately invaded Ukraine, a big spark to all of it were the talks of kind of enveloping Ukraine into NATO, and kind of like how you just stated earlier. I mean, it was if it worked the way it was supposed to, NATO would be fantastic. But as we have seen over the decades, it is just continuously an abusive system on the part of the U.S. In the sense that we get abused. We pay for it. We basically have no benefits coming out of it. And what, we're going to be in an alliance with France, UK, Germany, countries right now that like intentionally flood themselves with migrants from awful, horrible places. It makes absolutely no sense. It's one of those things where, as you said, I think most Americans are ready at that point to make that break from the Europe, and one of those breaks would be, let's get out of NATO.
Let's get out of NATO and let's get away from Ukraine. Now, we have another video here of a Trump official coming out and explaining what the deal is here with Ukraine in a mineral deal. We'll play that for you, and then I'll give you my thoughts about why it is that this is happening and what kind of use, if any, this serves us. You got it, Ryan? Play it.
I went to Kyiv 2 weeks ago and met with President Zelensky. Since then, we have struck a deal. Their governing council approved the deal last night. So I have an agreement from their economics minister. So the deal is done. President Zelensky is coming here to sign the deal tomorrow. So there is no more negotiation. There is nothing else. I'm sure President Zelensky and President Trump will have a wide-ranging discussion. But as far as the deal, it is complete. It is on paper, and the Ukrainian government has approved it. It is just awaiting the signature of the two heads of state tomorrow. And it is a deal on strategic minerals, oil and gas, and infrastructure assets. And it's really a win-win because it brings the Ukrainian people and the American business community closer together. It shows the American people that there is upside here for them, that we have not squandered the money because the American people are always concerned about overseas interventions, that there's a lot of corruption. So this deal takes out the possibility of any corruption using Americans' best practices. So I think it's very exciting. President Trump is going to be the first president ever to create assets for the American people rather than debt.
On its surface, I appreciate the concept, right? I'm going to simplify this. And this is my interpretation of what it is we're doing. Let's say, for instance, that I continue to give you money all the time. And your mother says to me, you got to stop giving him money. Well, why? Because you're just giving him money. And we're going to get nothing back out of it, first of all. And second of all is Denny's going to become reliant on us that anytime he needs something, you're just going to dish it over. That's basically what we've been doing to Ukraine. Finally, I say to your mother, okay, listen, I was at Dennis's place the other day. He's got plates that he's not even using because he got new plates as a birthday gift. He's got another vacuum cleaner that he's not using because he got that as another gift. There's a bunch of stuff that Dennis has at his house that I can go and take. We know he's not going to pay us back the money. I'll go and take those things and we'll have them. And it's assets to us. It's sort of like, all right, we didn't get our money back, but at least we got something out of it. And I know that, coming down the pike, his new roommate's going to bring in a new couch. We'll take the couch that he has. What's happening in that case is I am justifying that I have given you all this money. I know I'm not going to get it back. So what do? I take assets that I really don't need. I don't need the sofa. I don't need the vacuum cleaner. And I certainly don't need the plates. Unless, of course, out of the clear blue sky, my sofa at home gets a rip and my plates break out of nowhere and the vacuum cleaner that mommy uses is no good. This is the equivalent of what I see us doing here. So kudos for Trump in saying, I need to get something. You've got to give me something for what it is I've given you. I'm okay with that. The problem I have is that you're going to come back to me, Dennis, and you're going to say, My car broke. I need $4,000 or else I can't drive. I need a new transmission. And I'm going to say, oh, goodness gracious. And then you're going to say, look, I've got this old bed frame. I'll give you the bed frame. And so now I've established this precedent. And now I'm going to have to give you the $4,000 because at the end of the day, this is what was out there. And I buried myself in the hole, and I just didn't cut you off like your mother said. I didn't force you to go out and get a job and to go out and learn how to fend for yourself. It's the equivalent of, I'll teach you how to fish, but I am not going to fish for you. My concern here is that we are setting a precedent in selling the people of the United States of, oh yeah, we need these minerals, and justifying the fact that what we have coming up is going to be a budget from the House and the Senate that is going to include funding for Ukraine. And President Trump is going to get stuck in a spot. And they say Trump plays 4D chess. I'm playing 5D chess right here. And Trump is going to come back and say, we're going to give the funding to Ukraine, even though I said we were cutting that stuff off, because now we're getting this great mineral deal. And it's the equivalent of me coming home and your mother saying, why did you give him another $4,000? And I present her with a bed frame. And she says, I don't need a bed frame. And I say, well, just in case you do. And that is where this is headed. As a person who voted for President Trump, I want to see him take an effing sledgehammer to the relationship with Ukraine. I don't want their minerals. We don't need their minerals. We've never talked about minerals 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Do you ever remember a headline on Fox News, Newsmax, New York Times, Chicago Tribune, anywhere saying, if we only had Ukraine's minerals? I've been in the news business for 20 years. I didn't even know Ukraine had minerals. What are we doing with these things? You follow what I'm talking about?
I mean, it wasn't ever even presented on the campaign trail. It's why there's definitely a skeptical nature here. I think this is maybe Trump's best way to recoup the fact that, you know, ending the Ukraine-Russia war is not something that is going to happen, obviously, overnight. And I know there was the, day one, you know, we're ending it. But I agree with you. I know that this could be a resourceful transaction, but this could also just be a transaction where we're still giving them money. And yes, what we're getting in, you know, the lithium and all that, fantastic. But what did the American people really vote for? An earth minerals deal? Or can we just be done with it? I mean, look, I'm just going to say, I would really love it, especially in my lifetime, if we can still deal with the international community, but really become more of just a self-reliance in a way. And no more involvement or biolabs in Ukraine, no more cutting deals with other foreign countries that just don't really have our interests. You know, as isolationist as that sounds, the best way to take care of your own house is like knowing you're the owner of it and you can control it, not having Ukraine come in and steal a little here or other countries come in and steal a little here. We really got to strengthen the backbone. So maybe this does work out, but the way you laid it out, there's more of a probability that's the route that we head under.
Now, here's a funny little thing, right? Just as this litmus test to tell you how spot on correct I am. 5 minutes ago, I told people, hit the share button. And here we are talking about Ukraine, defunding Ukraine, telling the truth about what a mineral deal is really going to do. We have gone from 200 people to 174. So we have lost 12.5% of our audience simply by talking about this topic. If people think that that's happen chance, you don't understand technology. You just don't understand it. So I go back. You know, is Trump doing the best he can? Absolutely. Do we support him? 150%. Do I like this deal? I think it's hideous. What I wish there was, you know how Elon Musk is the voice of DOGE, and he's in Trump's ear and saying, hey, Mr. President, just want to let you know, USAID is giving this much to this one's giving this one to this one to that, that's that. They're doing all that. I wish he had somebody that was sort of like his consigliere, where at night he would go down humbly to this consigliere and say, tell me to my face where I'm going wrong. If that was me, I would say, Mr. President, where you're going wrong right now is you're forgetting that you hold all the cards. You don't want the Ukraine war. You're You're not stepping with both feet into the pool. You're dipping your toe. Don't do that. Go in full force. Make it so this way people like Lindsey Graham and Senator Thune, if they are pushing for Ukraine funding, you call them out and you call the people of South Carolina to remove him from office in his next election. You get Elon Musk to say he's going to fund the primary opponent to Lindsey Graham because he keeps on this Ukraine thing. And I wish that would happen because and I've never been president, obviously, but when you have a job like Trump has, he has so much information coming through him. It's a tidal wave, and he's got to be able to process it all. And periodically, people are going to lose a little bit of track. And I think if I were to pick the one place right now where I think that Trump is losing a little bit of his mojo, I want to play videos in front of him and saying, this is what you said about Ukraine in July. This is what you said about it in August. This is what you said about it in October. This is what you said about it the day before the election. And this is what you're saying about it now. We're kind of playing both fields. We're saying yes to Putin, hey Putin, and we're saying, hey, here's mineral deal, here's this and this. So my take on this is that all it would take is one person to sit down with Trump and say, Mr. President, we need to take a sledgehammer to this today. Chainsaw. Tell Zelensky, cancel the deal. Go home. We don't want to see you. It's over. And it would work. And the American people within 24 hours would be thankful and we'd move right on.
Yeah, I just got to say, I mean, I feel like this would also be somewhat at least evidence that, yet again, Trump is not a Russian puppet or some constituent. I mean, the fact that, we talked actually about it on the show yesterday, how Vance had told reporters at the first cabinet meeting that, they always make this assumption that Trump is going to be conceding to Putin. And this is clearly an act of him not conceding. Vance even pointed out he's trying to play the role of a diplomat. How do we end this war? What's the where's the solvency here? But maybe this is what the conclusion came down to of like, okay, we're not going to stop Putin, but we got, Ukraine here who maybe still needs the funding, but how do we get something in return? I agree with you. It's still a hideous deal. I wish there would be more negotiation and not necessarily signing today. But you just have to ask yourself, was there maybe a painted into the corner? So the other flip side, too, I want to say is that we talked very heavily yesterday about Trump established this all-star assembly of people for cabinet positions. And I still think that we always got to remember people do go for these positions out of self-interest. And then what happens when they get into the role or who they're associated with? We always say, right, Trump, sometimes hires the wrong people. Sometimes he hires the right people, but then those people surround themselves with wrong people. And then by proxy, that's where the issues start. I know we'll get into Epstein towards the end of the show, but a big issue is the New York FBI office. So when you have these different people who maybe are feeding you information and maybe they're even getting the wrong information, Trump's just one man. He is the president and he gets all these lanes of information. But sometimes you got person A telling you one thing, person B telling you another, person C telling you B and A aren't even correct. It's probably a lot. And maybe this is what they came down to. But you are correct. If we start seeing bills that show that we're going to be shuffling big amounts of money to Ukraine and this rare earth minerals deal didn't really produce anything for us, then they need to really go back to the drawing table.
Yeah, I mean, it's called justification.
Yeah.
And so, in that end, I have never done this. I just don't have the time. I'd love somebody who's listening right now to do this and then send us an email and tell us what you find. That email you can send to Denny. Denny at teamdml.com, DENNY at teamdml.com. Go look up who is the key donors to Lindsey Graham for his last 4 election runs. And I guarantee you, my bet is that you are going to find some big-time military contractors. So if you are a military contractor, you're talking about surrounding yourself with the wrong people. It's not necessarily people who are in your office. It's people who are going to have influence over you. So if your biggest donor is, I'm not going to say a company, but let's just say a military contractor who makes their money tenfold when we're at war or conflict with somebody, or when we're supporting a war. You're going to go and you're going to support somebody like Lindsey Graham, and you're going to run an amazing amount of money through any of his PACs, and therefore you're going to own him. So when you got somebody like Lindsey Graham, who is now front and center on the argument of why we need to fund Ukraine, is that really him speaking from where the heart is? Or is that him speaking because he knows he needs that money to get the next election? Or even so, because he signed a deal with the devil in saying that that's what he was going to promote in order to be able to keep his office space. So now when the president is sitting down and listening to Lindsey Graham, the president isn't really hearing an argument from Lindsey. He's just the microphone, or I should say the speaker, the loudspeaker, and the person on the microphone is the person who's working back at the head of some military contractor.
You know, just to point it out, as soon as we started talking about this, like you said, people are commenting on Facebook that there's issues with the video.
Of course.
Sharing and buffering. So
listen, this is so predictable.
Yeah.
It's so predictable because the algorithms are set for this sort of thing. When you're talking about something that's controversial, they will ratchet it back. And that's what it comes down to. So that's why you have to hit the share button. If you don't hit the share button, you don't care. That's basically what it comes down to. Now, just to reverse momentarily to something that is also Trump-esque, to where this is what I'd like to see him do with Ukraine, is what you wrote about today at the top of the 47 report, is about what Trump is doing with Venezuela and the illegal immigrants that are supposed to be immigrants. My God, I must be deficient of vitamins. Illegal aliens who are being sent back to Venezuela.
Yeah, so I guess this is key to his negotiating tactic. But if we recall, right, a few weeks ago, Trump, and he did it through Marco Rubio too, was really trying to stick it to Latin American countries about taking back the illegal aliens that they're deporting. He had that little infamous showdown with Colombia. So Venezuela was one of those countries, and as many of us know, they have a dictator socialist leader, Nicolas Maduro, and Venezuela is kind of still putting blockades on accepting back these illegal aliens. So Trump, as a retaliatory action, actually just canceled or revoked a Biden-era license allowing Chevron to produce oil in Venezuela. So that is going to very much crush what is already a struggling Venezuelan economy even further. So either Venezuela is going to have to shape up like Colombia did and start accepting those illegals, or we're going to see that country even falter more because oil is very vital to the overall Latin American country.
Yeah, so that's what he's supposed to be doing, and that's the way it is that you force. That's how it is that you're going to force a deal that is going to benefit the United States and save another country from killing itself off. If you're not going to come to me and do what you're supposed to do, I'm going to ruin you. And that's not Trump being a dictator or an evil person. That is Trump looking for the betterment and the interests of the United States citizen, taxpayer, and countryman.
Yeah, and we wrote on the 47 report too. He's even amping back up, returning back to the tariffs for Canada and Mexico as well as China. But he had just stated that he doesn't feel Mexico and Canada are doing enough to stop the fentanyl trafficking and securing the border on their behalf, so he'll be re-implementing those tariffs.
Yeah, listen to this. So I just asked the people of Facebook to look up and see who is Lindsey Graham's donors. Okay, first donor, Republican Jewish Coalition, $110,000.
Shocker.
Number two, Lockheed Martin,
yep,
$81,000. Lockheed Martin is one of the biggest defense contractors in the country, let alone the world. So there you go. I didn't even look it up.
Talking about South Carolina, I think Nikki Haley even ended up, or maybe it's Raytheon. I know she ended up on the board. Something up with South Carolina and a lot of their constituents there, or their elected reps there. But wow, that's crazy. Yeah.
Great job to Gail Harris who went out and did that search.
Yep.
But so I'm not crazy, right? I'm not crazy. I'm not making this stuff up. This is where it is. You know, there's another guy. Just to go over it real quick. Thomas Massey. There's a lot of people who think he's the cat's meow, but I am not one of them. And I have forever, and I talk about this. I just wrote my op-ed for the DML report that will come out later today at 5:00. So I'm not going to go into it deep now, but I did an op-ed today. It's a great little read. It talks about birthing hotels here in the United States and the scam that it is, and how President Trump has to go after that. Because if we don't, eventually what we're going to get is we're going to get a Russian or a Chinese person in the next 20 to 30 years running for president in this country And it's going to date back that they were actually born in a birthing hotel. You mark my word. You want to read that. You want to read it because it's going to teach you everything you know. It's an easy read. And that is same thing. Go to, actually, if you go to dmlreport.com and put in your email address, you'll guarantee that you'll get it today. Go to dmlreport.com and you're guaranteed you'll get it today at 5 o'clock. Now, with that in mind, coming backward, the how do I say it? Trump is doing everything he possibly can on the surface to stop illegal immigration. Now, when you look at the border, you've got 200 people in one single day. We have 94% decrease in people coming through the border. We won the game. If that stays like that, we won that game. They're not coming in anymore. Fantastic. The next problem we have is getting 50 million people out of this country. So what we're seeing right now, and I equate this to the Ukraine mineral deal, what we see right now is that DHS is doing the best they possibly can at getting the most violent illegal aliens out of here. Venezuela, you just talked about it, Guantanamo Bay, you've got all these different things. But we've got 50 million day laborers and their families in the United States that are floating around every single day without the fear of deportation. Now, we just put in, and I wrote about this yesterday on the DML report, we just put in this great registry. The registry now calls for every illegal alien in the United States must actually register with the United States of America, fingerprints, address, the whole 9 yards. If you don't do it, and I don't know how we're going to facilitate this, but if you don't do it, you are now a criminal, meaning that your original crime, which was forgiven through asylum BS loopholes, your original crime of crossing over the border right now is forgiven. You can't be deported because you claimed asylum. Your court date can be 5 years out. You're still allowed to work. You're allowed to do everything you possibly want. You are living outside of the shadows. There's no more shadows anymore. The way to get around that was that they created this registry. So now you can be an illegal alien in here waiting on an asylum claim, but if you don't go and put your fingerprints in and give your address and everything else, we can't track you, we don't know who you are, your asylum claim is gone. We're now going to be able to have grounds for deporting you because you broke the law by not registering. Perfect. I mean, that is a perfect plan. However, if Trump wanted to really take this to the next degree, he would make an executive order yesterday for mandatory e-verify. That would put all employers on notice that if you are going to hire these illegal aliens, you too are going to wind up being held accountable. I am telling you, as sure as I have a black shirt on, this problem that we're facing of 50 million people in our country and we trying to get them out would start to be solved in a day because every employer knows that Trump ain't kidding around. And they're going to say, get rid of these people, hire Americans, or just close down that division of whatever it is that we're doing with these illegal aliens. They'll lose their jobs, and these people are going to wind up going home. They're going to self-deport. It's going to cost us nothing. There's no humanitarian crisis. There's no leftists being able to say we're treating people cruelly, sending them to Guantanamo Bay. They'll go home. So this is the sort of thing where I'm saying that Trump needs to take this to the next level. Why we don't have this yet, I have no idea. But I will go back to Thomas Massie. Thomas Massie is the one Republican who says you can't put in mandatory e-verify. You can't put it in. That it's discriminating against Americans who are going to be labeled wrongly. Oh my God. Are there going to be one or two different people in there who basically get labeled incorrectly? Sure. Are we going to fix it? Absolutely. Probably with a click of a button. I said, why would anybody do this? And I looked up, and Thomas Massie's number one donor, number one, was a food packaging company. Who do you think hires illegal aliens? Food packaging companies. So if you make mandatory e-verify something that they have to follow, they are going to claim they're going to go out of business. And that's why you get somebody like Thomas Massie going up and fighting back as a Republican against mandatory e-verify, which would be one of the greatest tools we can have to get rid of the people in this country on their own through self-deportation.
I think you got a good point there. I mean, you got that registry going. It's a way to just kind of keep accountable of maybe finally getting the actual number two of how many illegal aliens are truly in the country, considering that 11 million number gets floated around by the mainstream media all the time. Maybe this is a way to actually get that real accurate number count.
Yeah. Now, with that being said, we'll move on to something else. We have a new Secretary of the Navy.
Yes, Hung Kale. We have a cool video here where he talks about how he is from Vietnam originally, and he escaped the communist regime there to come to America, join the Navy, and now he'll be serving, or soon to be serving, the Trump administration.
All right, play it.
This is the scariest sound you will hear when you live in a communist country. This is the last sound my parents heard when their fathers were taken away in the middle of the night, and they never saw their loved ones again. That's the sound of losing your freedom, the sound of always living in fear. That's my family's real life story. We escaped from Vietnam just days before Saigon fell to the communists. We were given a new life in the most generous country on earth. America saved my life. I graduated from the United States Naval Academy. I earned a master's in physics and fellowships at MIT and Harvard before the left replaced merit with racial quotas. I spent my life trying to repay my debt to America, my country, our country, with 25 years of service in Navy Special Operations, combat in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Somalia.
You know, Dennis, a lot of times people will look at somebody like Trump, or especially somebody like me, and make a claim that we're racist, that we just want the country to be all white men. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. In fact, even somebody on Team DML yesterday, because I was complimenting the $5 million gold card idea. And, pushing back on me that it's a bad idea, it's going to change our culture. I don't agree with that. I am pro-immigration at limited numbers to where we take in the best of the best. Now, assuming this gentleman right here was vetted, and I mean vetted as far as you can vet a human being, I love the fact that he's in there. Trump is showing a level of diversity that says, what are you talking about? I'm not taking somebody for their skin color or for their nationality. I'm taking somebody who is the best person for the job. And I'm assuming this guy is the poster child for what he's talking about.
And it kind of connects what we started with the beginning of the show. I mean, he came from a country that does not respect or allow free speech, or at least when he was a child then. So, for someone who was able to come here, see the value of America, and then give back in the highest form possible, which is service to the country. I always think about, your old idea about how maybe even implementing for the immigration system service to the country as a mandatory. I know we've talked about that, or you've talked about that in years past. So I think it's fantastic that he's getting put to that position as someone who, was brought here and served the country and has a love for America.
Well, look, at the end of the day, we want the best people possible. And this time in this administration, I truly believe that's what Trump is doing. I think he's measuring loyalty, not only to him, but to the country. And he's measuring who here is going to bring out the Make America Great Again agenda better than anybody else. Look what he did with DHS and ICE. Right off the bat, he wanted mass deportations. They were moving too slow. He sits down with Kristi Noem and says, hey, it's a month. I don't like where we are. Get rid of these people. So I think one of the best things for us as American citizens is the fact that Trump doesn't have a second term in him. This is his one term. He's going to make the best of it. He's not going to waste a single damn day. He knows that the hourglass is running out of sand every day that goes behind him. So are there going to be mistakes? There are. Are there going to be times when you're like, why are we doing a mineral deal? There are. For as long as the people around him don't kiss the ring and instead say, we are here to make America great again, right, Mr. President? Yes. I think we need to throttle this. I think we need to pull back on that. I think we need to maybe change gears a little bit here. We're going too soft on this way, or maybe too hard on this way. If the people that are in his administration do not cower and stand tall, this will be the greatest, and I'm going to repeat this, The greatest administration this country has ever had, bar none, no close second place. Now, one of the things that people are pissed off about is that the Epstein files, which were, I guess you could say, released yesterday, but that's like saying that if you had a bologna on American sandwich with cheese and all they served you on the plate was cheese, where's the bologna and where's the bread? That was the Epstein's files yesterday.
I would even describe it as you asking me and Ryan to give you a yearly summary on everything we've ever done so that it's very vital to see where the direction of the company goes. And we hand you over a document that just has a bunch of black lines on it.
Yep. Yep.
Now, you know, I think it's a very complicated situation, one that people are trying to say is not complicated. And in the same way how we always say illegal immigration is very integral to so many different issues in this country, it is very much the case to be made that Jeffrey Epstein is equatable to that in the sense of how far that man's connections run to people in our government, to people of high status in the business world, to celebrities. I mean, name me a more intricate private citizen, I do quotes, who's had more big-time people fly on his plane. So I would say that this was a little bit of a mishap on the Trump administration's part. I mean, Ryan's got the B-roll of it. He'll play it. But rather than do the full release, we didn't get any new information yesterday than comparably of what we had. But they gave these binders to top influencers on X. Now, surface level, that might seem great because it's like, hey, we're scapegoating the mainstream media and we're trying to bring it out full forward with the alternative media, and we're proponents to that. But this was more of a photo op in the sense that the binders didn't contain anything new. A lot of people didn't like the taste of it. I mean, you got DC Draino holding the thing with a smile. I mean, these are victims from 20 years or 30 years back of prostitution and human trafficking rings with people who have escaped accountability. So it's just bad optics, but I understand what's happening here. The DOJ, and I feel Pam Bondi's been getting the flack for it, and I think she is trying her best. They want the American public to have transparency. These are things we've been asking about for decades and years, including JFK and MLK. So to not have the full transparency, all right, fine, but don't tell us that it's coming if you're not ready to actually give the full over. As for the culprit behind it all, from indications here, it's looking that the vital documents that are essential to naming or at least confirming who went to that island are in the hands of the New York FBI office, and there are ongoing efforts of deleting evidence. I think it's safe to say at this point there's a higher probability we're not really going to get full answers here or see big-time arrests, and it is what it is. Maybe this is ripping the Band-Aid off quick to get past it, but I do think yesterday was a little bit of a misfire, even if there was some good intention to it. But it seems it's going to be a complicated thing where as much as we want those answers, it seems like they may just not come.
Senator Hillary Clinton. Do you know what state she was a senator in?
New York.
There you go. There is zero doubt in my mind. I mean, zero doubt in my mind that what you've watched happen over the past 4 years under the Biden administration and why it is that the cheat was on to ensure that victory was because the Barack Obamas, the Hillary Clintons, the Joe Bidens, and Lord knows who else needed to have the kind of access that one needs to get rid of the dead bodies, so to say. This was, I'm not kidding, I have talked about this ad nauseum in years past. It's worth me bringing up again. Let the listeners and the viewers here have this sink in. This has always been my philosophy. It has always been my belief. My gut says it's true, and I'm never going to back off until somebody can ironclad prove it to me. Barack Obama truly believed that Hillary Clinton was going to win that 2016 election. He laughed at the idea of Trump being president. He actually ridiculed Trump to his face at the correspondence dinner in Washington, D.C., and Trump sat there and had to take it. I believe he felt that Hillary would go in, and because he and Hillary were both co-conspirators to the crimes, so to say, it gave more time to get rid of all the evidence that needed to be get rid of, and at the same time, continue the agenda to fundamentally transform the United States into something that is just a liberal bastion that nobody could recognize. A funny thing happened on the way to the White House. Hillary Clinton shockingly lost. Now, when you go back and take a look at how it is that they were trying to ensure that Trump would never get into office, look at Russiagate. Who was behind Russiagate? You don't think that Barack Obama had his hands in that? Please. You don't do things like the FBI did and the DOJ did and all these people did unless the President of the United States knows that you're doing it. But they protected him. They kept him back. Remember the whole tarmac thing
Yes.
where Bill Clinton, all right? So when I see what happened, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden all got into a massive panic. What are we going to do? Because if that guy's got 8 years to go through all the files and get all the things, eventually he's going to unearth what it is that we've got hidden, where all the bodies are. Trump comes in, he's new to office, he doesn't know where to look. You know, he's more worried about, getting good press or whatever it may be. And then before long, just as you start to understand how the ebb and flow of Washington, D.C. works, and that's where Trump was at the time when COVID mysteriously came up out of nowhere, now all of a sudden what you're doing is you're creating a scenario where you put into the voter's head a level of doubt, reasonable doubt, that Donald J. Trump, despite creating the best economy we've ever had in 50 years, was not reelectable. We need Joe Biden. Now let's take this a step further. In Iowa caucus and in New Hampshire primaries, Joe Biden didn't even score. He was completely out of it. Nobody wanted this guy whatsoever. And yet in the debates, he still stayed center stage. How did that happen? Right next to Kamala Harris, by the way. Okay? This is not by chance. So the two of them are sitting there. Neither one of them are scoring, right, leading up to Iowa. Kamala drops out. He can't score in either two of those two states. And then the third state, where basically if he doesn't come in first, he's out. He comes in first in South Carolina. And then after he comes first in South Carolina, every single Democrat on that stage suddenly drops out and gives their endorsement to Joe Biden, who's now going to go one to one on Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders has never a chance to ever be president of the United States. He's too radical, he's independent, and in many cases, he's just too honest. So now Joe Biden all of a sudden comes from the ashes, and now he's got the nomination, and then you're going to tell me that he gets 80 plus million votes? Where did the 10 million votes from Joe Biden go when it was time for Kamala Harris, his vice president, to win the election? Where did those 10 million people disappear? So then the argument becomes that Joe Biden won that election because the number one objective for Joe Biden was to make sure that the remaining bodies were completely gone. Rid of them. Burn them. Get rid of everything. We got 4 years at minimum to do this. We get 8, fantastic, but we got 4. Start burning everything. If you don't think that's why that man was in there, if you think that Barack Obama really wanted Joe Biden in there because he thought he was going to be great for all the different policies, no, it was because he had a corrupt guy who was going to do everything he could to get rid of the dead bodies and all the evidence because he too was a co-conspirator. And so 4 years later, Trump is on the stage promising Epstein files and JFK files and MLK files and total transparency on everything. And I'm not saying that Trump doesn't want to do it. I think he does want to do it because I think the only person who can't stand the people I just mentioned more than me is Trump. Yeah. They tried to take his freedom, his money, and his life. So now he's sitting there and he's trying to give you the information that he knows will set the record straight on many different fronts, including the stolen 2020 election. And what happens? You get a document that looks nothing like anything new. It's the old stuff. Trump checks the box because he kept a promise of giving out the Epstein files. But at the end of the day, the criminals outdid the sleuths. They had enough time to get rid of everything, and the sleuths are coming back and saying, this is all we got. And you could blame it on the FBI office. And what will happen, and I conclude on this, the American people have short attention spans. The next flow of information about something else, be it Ukraine, China, illegal immigration, healthcare, whatever it is, you watch in the next couple of days, there will be a major news story in the next couple of days. So this way, the Epstein files and everybody being pissed off about it will fall to the bottom of the X feeds, and it will be a thing that never comes up ever again.
I disagree.
Okay, good. Why?
I just think, well, I agree with mostly everything you said, except for the very end there. I think, and I've kind of seen it too, I think what makes, maybe America First, MAGA, that whole conglomerate very unique is that, of course, I want to see Trump succeed. I like a lot of what he does. But we got, like you already said, we got Trump for 4 years. Then there's going to be the after, and maybe he could get a lot fixed up, but we got to make sure that it remains fixed. And I think for a very large amount of people, and I do agree with you too, that I think Trump wants the transparency. I mean, my God, he's got RFK Jr. on his administration, and he has 2 relatives who basically were assassinated, questionable deaths there.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know he wants it, and I think our government is just so deeply entrenched with those awful bureaucrats that are stonewalling the way they are, that it's created that frustration. And I think I agree with you that there'll be that big news story that, takes everyone's attention, but we will come back. I mean, the American people will come back to it. And I think the reason is because the American people are so tired of just being lied to.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, give it to us. We know that there are some bad apples that were all involved with this, where we can handle it, where we can handle the rated R movie. Play it for us, tell us what it is, and then let's move on. In the same way, right, with January 6th, I hate when anyone ever brings up anymore. It happened. You had 20,000 different investigations on it. You had people unlawfully, in my opinion, arrested over it in ways that they shouldn't have been, but Trump pardoned them. We're getting them out. Hopefully, I don't even know what the status is on most of those people. I'm hoping most of them are out. Now we pivot and we move on. When Adam Schiff brings it up, you just tell him to shut up and we move on. So my theory here is that, yeah, it will be the American public will be pulled onto something else. But ultimately, I mean, think about it. We still ask for JFK to this day, and look how long ago it was. MLK too. So Americans want the answers. Will we ever fully get them? I'm going to bet we don't. But to your point, how you said it, when you have people like the Clintons, when you have people like the Obamas, and they're intricate and connected with people whose names we don't even know, it's going to be so hard to weed it out. So my hope is that Trump, even if he can't accomplish it, at least forward, that we got more of the transparent window.
Well, I think you just only cemented my point. I don't really know what part you were disagreeing with me on, because go ahead.
That people would just forget about it.
Yeah,
okay, that was the only part I disagreed with. No, everything else I agreed. I just that people would be like, okay, they got binders, we're good, we'll move on. But people will come back to it because we've always come back to the other cases.
The people will come back to it. I mean, look, the thousands of people who are going to listen to this program today, they're not going to forget about the Epstein files because it's burned in their head, in the same way that I'm not going to forget about the 2020 election, or how it is that Russiagate was created. I'm just too smart to it, and it helps me stay sharp. So this way, when I hear something come out of the U.S. government, I know to handle it with skepticism and doubt. I don't think for one moment that Trump is part of any withholding of information. I think Trump is just as victim to this as you and I are, to where he's sitting there and saying, oh, who's on that file? And Mr. President, it's the same names we've always heard of. It's nothing new. Son of a gun. Why can't we find it? I'll tell you why you can't find it. If somebody gives the lotto numbers because it's fixed and they write it in the sand, so this way you can see it, guess why they write it in the sand? Because eventually the ocean's going to come up and it's going to wipe away the evidence. You stole. You gave the evidence, but you didn't send it in a text. You didn't send it on a piece of paper. You didn't say it over the phone. You went down to the beach and said, if you want to know what the lotto numbers are, because I'm going to fix it, they're written in the sand. And you write them in the sand, and then you know that it's going to wash it away. There is no way that anybody's ever going to be able to prove that you did what you did. That is what's happening right now in Washington, D.C. It's been happening for the 4 years that Biden was in office, and they did everything they possibly could to make sure that Trump didn't have that extra time. And now this time comes around, and he won the election, and the people who are most concerned about those files getting out and other files, they're not concerned anymore because they realize the fact that the sand has been washed away and there's no way they're ever going to get bagged.
And like you said, it would make people think, right? Now that we know what Trump is able to bring with like wanting to get the transparency and what we can be able to do to actually share trust with the American public, it makes you reflect on the Obama administration, the Bush administration, obviously the Clinton administration, considering the amount of flights he's been on. And when you rethink about it, I mean, especially as someone your age, now that you reflect, don't you see it's like, wow, those are administrations that were never transparent, that never actually gave the truth to the American people. So if you think about it, it's decades of being duped by, whether it was a Republican president like George Bush or a Democrat like Bill or Obama. I think Trump now is going to establish the tradition of the American people are smart. They don't want to be lied to. They want to know what is going on.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, and we're kind of repeating and beating a dead horse here. So let's move on to I think you have one more video of, we miss Raggedy Ann wannabe. But the point is this. I want to know if we do have UFOs captured and we know what's going on with it. I want to know who did kill JFK. Now, if I find out that JFK was killed by the CIA, there's nothing I could do about it. Am I going to trust the CIA? I've already lost my trust for all government agencies. And at least you're explaining to me why it is that I'm correct in my loss of trust. Also, by revealing the information, it sets the precedent to why we have to reset and rebuild, which we're trying to do already. I don't believe that the American people are ever going to be told the truth about these things, whether we scream, give me Kash Patel, give me a Pam Bondi. I don't believe we're ever going to find out, because I think that the evildoers, when they're doing these kind of evil things, one of the things they practice is, how do we get rid of the lines that connect back to us? And that's why they're so hard to capture. I'll compare it to this. Here it comes. 1 trillion times I've told this story. When I met with Rudy Giuliani in making They Come to America 2, and I said to him, why can't we catch terrorists? He said, because they're not like the mafia. When the mafia commits a crime, they look to launder money, they look to bury a body, they look to, get rid of the car parts. Even though we're not criminals ourselves, we can still put our minds into the minds of the mafia, because there's only certain ways that you can launder money and get rid of a body and sell off car parts. He says, but when you try to stop a terrorist, you are taking an irrational mind, somebody who's willing to kill themselves for the death of innocent people who they don't even know, basically because of religious ideology. It's almost impossible for a rational person to put their mind into an irrational person. Unlike the mafia guy who's got an end game, which is, I want to enrich myself or I want to get rid of a crime, these people are willing to kill themselves at any given time. It's impossible to catch them. I find that to be an equivalent to why it is that we can't catch these bad actors. And here's why. In the same way that we can't associate with somebody who would kill themselves in the name of killing innocent people, it's very hard to get your mind around the idea that you are going to sell out your own country, the country that has given you the opportunities that people all around the world will never be able to get, how you can sell out your country for your own selfish interests. And in doing that, destroying the future for your own children and your own grandchildren, it makes no sense to us. And that's why it's so hard to catch, because we can't figure it out. Who would want to kill off their own country? I can't get my head around this. How the hell are you going to do something like that? And that's why we're struggling at the end of the day to do it. The second reason why is something you said. When you look at something like UFOs, or is there really an asteroid that's going to, are there terrorists really and cartels in every city? We're not told about these things because they don't want the American people to panic. That's really what it comes down to. I've said it a gazillion times, and I'll end it on this and let you play the video of Raggedy Ann. I believe there is a reason why we have never attacked the cartels. The cartels operate in every single last city and town in this country. They're everywhere. Why wouldn't we just simply go in and wipe out these now called terrorists out of Mexico? They don't stand a chance against us militarily. The reason being is, I believe they have a ransom held over us, which says, if you come in and wipe us out, if you wipe out our drug trade, if you wipe out our families, we are in your cities. And the minute you wipe us out, we're going to take down a city, be it with a smart bomb or whatever it may be. Terror attacks all day long, you will not be able to stop it. And I think that's why it is that we allow this crap to happen, because I think we opened up our borders and opened up the tunnels, if you will, for crime to fester, that we've created ourselves such a problem that every president who swears that they're going to crack down on drugs never, ever does it. Because to crack down on drugs, you've got to kill the dragon at the head, and that means the cartels. And if you kill the dragon at the head, you're going to lose a couple of cities. And I don't think any president has had the balls yet to carry that out. And I could understand why. That's truly that. I have studied this for 20 years, and I can't understand. We know who the enemy is. We know where they are. We know what they're doing. There's no doubt about it. It's no question mark of whether or not this would be a war crime. This is good for humanity. It's good for Mexico. It's good for the American people. It's good for around the world. Why haven't we just done this? There's no answer other than the one I just gave you.
It's a shame, because I think when you compare it to everything else, right? I said it sometime earlier this week. I think our real American war front is dealing with the cartels and what we have going on at the southern border. But to your point, it just it becomes a long history log of trying to sift through and seeing what can come to light so that Americans can get answers. I understand what you're saying, that Americans will panic. I wonder if we are heading into an era where it's, like I said, play the rated R movie. We want to see it. We want to know. I mean, I was asked a question here. Denny, can you address this? I read somewhere that Trump's name was on the flight logs. It's like you said, it's a very complicated situation. He never flew to the island. Jeffrey Epstein's plane was one of those things. It was going everywhere, from Africa to New York to everywhere. And RFK was on the plane at one point. So the thing is, we just won't ever get the full, clear answers of what it was all unless they were all released. But as we've kind of hit on the head quite a bit here, a lot of it is either just not going to come to light or have already been shaded out. To go with our last clip here, it's KGP, or Karine Jean-Pierre, and I think it's just one of those things we got to play that reassures us how disarray the Democrat Party is. At least, we were talking about Joe Biden, how he was almost kind of implemented in his presidency, because not that Obama,
he was planted into it.
Planted in there, not because Obama thought he was the cat's meow, but because he served a purpose. But KJP here basically shows that once his purpose was served, they literally discarded him. She even compares it to a firing squad.
Let's hear what she says.
It was a firing squad, and I had never seen anything like it before. I'd never seen a party do that in the way that they did, and it was hurtful and sad to see that happening. A firing squad around a person who I believe was a true patriot, a person who I believe did everything that he can for this country, a person who I believe, as I mentioned before, has done more in one term than most presidents had done in 2 terms, historical things. And I was shocked by what I was seeing.
And Karine, just to clarify, these are other Democrats and Democratic leadership coming out against Biden.
Yep, I had never seen anything like that. That was, if you're asking me, the thing that I saw in those 3 weeks, that was shocking. Shocking. And instead of coming together to really be unified and trying to figure out how do we save our democracy, how do we fight back, that's what I was seeing.
It's funny. I'm looking at the screen here, and I just looked at the clock. We have 36 minutes over what we usually go. That's how good the conversation was
a big
today.
day. And I just want to point out,
Yeah.
I've always said it, I think she's probably a year away from writing a tell-all book.
Dennis,
I've always said it.
you nailed this on the head. I mean, clearly anybody who works for an administration, especially at that level, is going to write a book. She is going to make so much money on her book. It's immeasurable. I mean, her book may actually wind up doing easy $20-30 million in sales. I would have a hard time not wanting to buy it because the question is, does she continue to lie for that administration like she did on a daily basis up on that platform? Or does she have a coming to Jesus and say, I got to come clean and tell everything I know, so this way I don't go down in history as being the mouthpiece for the most dishonest administration of all time? Now, you listen to what she just said right there, and it sounds like she's going to go down I'm going to continue the lie to cover up my own past and blame everybody else, including the Democrat Party. You only do something like that. You only get on stage and rip the party that you are a part of if indeed you want to sell books. She is cutting herself out of the Democrat Party.
Yes.
And she is saying, I'm going to sell a ton of books, and before long, I want to have my TV show on MSNBC, and that's what it's going to come down to. It's amazing. That has got to be the most clear sentence I've ever heard her deliver.
And you want to know why? It actually sounded like she was speaking honest.
There you go.
Isn't that shocking?
There you go.
How clear in the clarity you can speak when you actually share your honest opinion. That might have been the first time we've ever played something from her where she was actually like speaking a truth there. She witnessed Biden was thrown under the bus, like the Democrats sacrificed the cow. You know?
She is a woman who every single day sounded like she was chewing on glass when speaking. And that was a woman who sounded almost eloquent. And even though I didn't agree with her message,
right,
eloquent in delivery, confident in delivery. And to your point, the truth is always an easy thing to convey. You don't have to cover tracks. You just got to speak from the stomach and from the heart. That's what she did. Versus getting up and lying to the American people every day and then coming in the next day and pretending like she didn't lie. That's the difference. So that's it for us. We went really long today. I hope you appreciated the show. I know I had a good time doing it. It was a really interesting conversation.
Yeah.
My apologies for those of you who said, hey, you went too long. If you're on Facebook, please, as you exit out, hit that share button. If you're on Rumble and on X, I think they have share buttons and retweet buttons and all that other stuff too. That's great as well. Tomorrow, on the DML News app, you could download it for free from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. It will also be linked on the DML Report and on 47report.com. Go to 47report.com to get the newsletter that comes in every single day into your inbox. We will offer you a link to a very interesting conversation tomorrow. I started a podcast called Life After 50. I started it in the beginning of January. And for the first 8 episodes, I interviewed a wide variety of people, everyday people with expertise and very interesting stories along the way. I'm not going to sit here and tell you about each one of them, but believe me, I'm telling you, everything from cancer to becoming a millionaire to finding God to doing investigations on war crimes. Very interesting stuff. This week, episode 9, because it's my favorite number, Denny is going to actually interview me. And we're going to talk about life after 50 with me. A lot of interesting stories that I've probably never shared before. You'll be able to watch that. Again, you'll get the links from us tomorrow. Make sure that you're 47report.com, that you're registered. If you don't see it tomorrow morning in your inbox, go check out the spam. It's going to be very, very, very interesting show. That said, I already told you 47report.com. I also told you in the beginning of this weekend marks the end of the coupon for 50% off on anything on dmlcbd.com. Go to dmlcbd.com. The coupon code is NEWS, N-E-W-S. There you go. So dmlcbd.com, 50% off up until Sunday. Code is NEWS, N-E-W-S. Go in there and get it done. And then, of course, 47report.com. Make sure you get that. And when you get it every morning, share it. Share it on social media. Share it on X. Share it through your email campaigns. Share it with people that you know. Help us build a conduit to more people via the truth. And Denny's about to hold something up here. If you look at it, focus in on Denny, I'll explain it. In the newsletter, we have a referral program. And we're starting off with a nice little gift. It is a 47 report newsletter coaster. And we send it to you for free. All you got to do is refer 2 people. And we get those referrals. We can track it. We will send that to you with a thank you letter in the mail. You'll get it. It's good to go. And then what we're going to be doing, I think this week, is we're going to implement, if you get 10 referrals, you're going to wind up getting a free cup, the coffee cup that we use here, Dennis and I do every day, Life After 50 podcast. So go in 47report.com. You'll see on every newsletter, it has a referral thing at the bottom. We track it, we trace it, and then we send you these free gifts. It's our way to help the Trump administration get the truth out to the masses, because as we spoke about today at the opening, the lid is placed on top of conservative voices, and you and I have to be the conduit to getting that message out to everybody. I can't do it by myself. Trump can't do it by himself. In the same way he needed you to vote for him, and I need you to hit the share button, we need you to get this newsletter out to everybody. With that being said, until tomorrow on Life After 50, or for those of you who just want to hear about the news, Monday morning again, God willing, may he bless you, your family, the president, the vice president, and of course, these United States.
And today's teamed email blessing goes out to Pamela Baca.
All right, Pamela, run with it. We'll talk to you soon.
Get the Dennis Michael Lynch podcast every day by subscribing on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and download the DMail News app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store for breaking news, merchandise, films, exclusive content, and teamed email.